A lot of people are very upset with Butch Hartman. I am also upset with Butch Hartman, but for different reasons, and I think that is a good video topic. Even if you're not familiar with the name Butch Hartman, you've probably seen it a few times before. He is the animator and showrunner behind shows like Fairly OddParents, Danny Phantom, and many other very successful cartoons, particularly at Nickelodeon. He has gotten a larger online presence since he left Nickelodeon in February of 2018. Yeah, he's amassed a bit of a following since leaving the network. On June 18th, 2018, he announced what his next big project was, an online streaming service designed to bring family-friendly original content online that was called Oaxis, which he would fund via Kickstarter. The campaign was bad. I strongly considered making a video about this campaign when it came out because I thought it was a great example of everything you shouldn't do when making a Kickstarter. I thought it was a bit manipulative and it wasn't informative enough, and generally I considered it to be pretty sketchy. And my beliefs haven't changed. What's really shocked me is the fact that the campaign actually reached its funding goals. I ended up not making that video because the topic was covered in detail by an entourage of other people. Namely, Penguin Zero, Pie Guy Rules, and Eddie Burback all made good videos dissecting why this Kickstarter was really terrible. And I'm going to link to Eddie Burback's video in the cards up there and in the description because I think that he explains it in far more detail and in a far more entertaining way than I ever could, and really hits all the points that I would want to hit. But I'll give you a quick rundown as to why people were pretty skeptical of this, including myself. First, it seemed really thrown together. They didn't seem very far along in development. The only thing of substance there was like a logo. They weren't saying what was actually going to be on there. They didn't say how it would work. They didn't give any dates. They didn't talk about where, all the funding was going. Everything seemed very thrown together very quickly, and it just didn't look very professional. Second, it seemed like a bad idea. The idea, as undefined as it was to create a family-friendly network that an entire family could watch at any time and feel completely comfortable about what's there. But that seems very challenging to do, especially via something like Kickstarter. And it also seemed that was something that already exists in many different forms. Third, it seemed way too ambitious. He was promising like movies, TV shows, reality, fitness, sports, dramas, animation, and more, along with this YouTube-like video sharing service where every video was being monitored by humans to ensure that it's family friendly. It just seemed monumental and it wasn't very defined. He promised a
24/7 entertainment platform with high-quality, family-friendly entertainment as its central mission. We're going to use the power of the smartphone and other personal devices to our advantage. We're going to start off as a subscription-based streaming service, and we're going to have everything you've come to expect from networks you're familiar with, but without the heavy focus on negative subject matter.
Fourth, it wasn't clear what the Kickstarter money was actually for. The campaign asked for $250,000 to launch this thing, which may be a lot of money in Kickstarter terms, but it didn't seem anywhere close to enough to build this network. He answered this in a very vague way in a Q&A video.
What is the Kickstarter money going to be used for? Great question. Listen, I know that the Kickstarter money is not nearly enough of what is needed to build an entertainment platform. I mean, to build a streaming platform takes millions and millions of dollars. There's designers involved. There's tons of experimenting that goes on with coding, design, layouts, the way the platform is going to function, prototypes, all that stuff. This takes time It takes people. And the Kickstarter money is just that. That's why it's called a Kickstarter. It's kicking us off to get started on this stuff so we can begin hiring people to build this platform. And we wanted to step outside the norms of regular networks and huge corporations and let you guys be a part of the awesome things that you want to see.
To me, I wanted more information, and I didn't feel like there was really any information to be found. So I was very skeptical of this campaign, and I didn't like the way that he was using his influence to get attention towards something that was really so poorly put together and didn't seem like it was going to work. But I didn't make that video, and I let the matter rest until a few days ago, when a video of Hartman speaking at a conference a while back resurfaced on Reddit's video page under the title, "Butch Hartman lies to fans about Oaxis streaming service, reveals plan to convert kids to Christianity." It sounded pretty nefarious, and the post got over 700 upvotes and started a stream of videos on YouTube talking about his evil plans to get your kid to go to Sunday school. And since then, Butch Hartman has become rather controversial, and he's become rather silent online, and has been taking down re-uploads of this conference and being perhaps a bit antagonistic. In defending some of what Butch Hartman says in this video, I don't mean to defend Butch Hartman as an idea. He's done and said a lot of things that I can't get behind, that I think are pretty questionable, some of which just seems totally insane. The one that gets under my nerves most often is he often conveys this idea that he is above criticism, or that certain criticism can't be applied to him, that I think is really damaging.
Someone says, what do I think of the Oaxis Family Guy meme? Oh, I'm not even going to look at it because the question's being asked by Dueling Duelist True. I'm not even going to look at it, and I don't care. Because you know why? Whenever you put yourself out there to do anything, there's always someone that's going to try and bring you down because they've never done anything on their own. And so if someone wants to do something and they want to ask me questions like that, that's one thing. But if someone doesn't do anything and they want to criticize, then I have no time for them. No time for them. So the person that asked that question, whose name will not be mentioned ever by my lips, I just want to tell all people like that, as I get back to safety here, that if you guys can't do it yourselves, you shouldn't criticize anybody else. You really shouldn't. Now, another cartoonist wants to have a problem with me or whatever, that's a different story. But at least somebody who's actually done something I'll talk to or talk about.
Speaking of theme songs.
Theme songs.
Normally,
you know what's funny? Wait, I want to say one more thing.
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
as many things as I've done in my life, like being a father, being a husband, being a guy who's in his 50s who's a boss, a guy who's done shows, a guy who's stayed up late at night working really hard, to answer questions from people who've never done anything and they want to criticize. It makes me laugh. It makes me laugh. It's like, really? That's your question? So it's quite amusing, actually. So good luck out there trying to get a rise out of me, because you never will. You don't get a rise out of me, though, is this game! So I look at people that critique as weak. Weak rhymes with critique. So, if you're going to critique like, hey, this is never going to work or whatever, then I just say, you know what, let's see you try it, and then we'll see how you do. So go ahead and critique away, because all it does is make me stronger. If you guys think you're going to knock me down or make me fail, do you know who you're dealing with? Do you really know? Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? What I've been up against already as a father and a husband and someone who's worked in Hollywood for 30 years, and you are going to take me down? What are you kidding? That's kind of a joke, I think. So good luck. Good. Best of luck, everybody.
I agree. I think people can just be unnecessarily mean.
Well, yeah. Here's the thing about the internet. What's great about the internet? First of all, it's very powerful.
You're hiding behind a keyboard.
Yeah, you're a coward. Yeah, you're a coward.
He once said this, which I don't even know what to make of this.
So anyway, but Tara was not the original Timmy Turner. The original actress was Mary Kay Bergman, who sadly passed away. But she
was such a sweet, sweet lady.
Sweet lady. Mm-hmm. She also did a bunch of voices on South Park when that first started.
Yeah.
She was the mom on South Park.
No, she had a very prolific career. She was awesome.
Doing great. And then she ended up passing away. And I think Tara actually had something to do with that. And so that's probably that was probably your fault. No, I'm kidding.
Even in this conference, he says some things that I think are patently false in order to promote his product to this particular audience that's here, such as insinuating that content that lacks Judeo-Christian values at its roots is leading to childhood depression and suicide, which just is not correct. And it's a pretty gross way to use this issue as a way of promoting his product.
As a result, kids today, they have no purpose. There's depression. There's suicide. Constant exposure to corrupt social media and entertainment is a primary contributor to this crisis. I know kids who have committed suicide. When I grew up, kids had a hard time. They got through it. Suicide was never even thought about. Where's that coming from? Influence is the key word.
Also, just by using these clips you've already seen, and not to even mention the ones that I'm going to use later in this video, I'm running a substantial risk at getting a copyright claim, despite the fact that all these are being protected under fair use, links in the description explaining why these are protected uses. He or someone affiliated with him has been claiming lots of different videos wrongfully, and I can't defend that, and it's definitely not helping his case or the case that I'm trying to make here. But I'm not defending Butch Hartman because I think he needs a league of tiny YouTubers to come out and tell him that he's a good person. I think that this is actually something more important than Butch Hartman and above his flaws as a person. I think that people's reaction to the religious part of this conference shows a kind of philosophical language barrier that is really damaging the way that religious and non-religious people communicate and preventing them from understanding one another. And I want to try to explain the kind of thinking that Christians have when they speak in this way, and why I don't think that Butch Hartman has some nefarious plan to put your kid in the church choir. From the title of that r/videos post, that Butch Hartman is attempting to reveal his plan to convert children to Christianity, it creates this idea that Butch Hartman is creating this network secretly that is like a religious network. But I think it's pretty plain that he is not intending to create a religious network, even though what he's doing is definitely motivated by his Christian values. He talks about how he sees Oaxis spiritually in very clear language here.
So 5 minutes, 9 hours on screen, 11 hours exposed to electronic media, suicide, depression, it's pretty bad out there. But anything can be changed.
Yeah.
Amen? Amen. While we look not at the things which are seen, but the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. 2 Corinthians. Anything can be changed. So I am uniquely qualified to bring about this change. This is not about me. This is about him. I am humble. I am grateful. I am putting my life into a brand new wineskin.
And he talks about how he likes to use art to talk in parables. And he thinks that he can show wholesome content that reflects his beliefs in Jesus.
My point is, all of these shows are, they have Christ inside them. Because I speak in parables. That's the way I speak. They feel the kingdom in my shows. And no one can tell me. It's so funny as a Christian. They're always like, there's something about your shows I really like. I don't know what it is. I'm like, yeah, like Matt said last night, like Trump came up and said, what you said really inspired you? What did it touch you? It meant a lot to me. That's what they say to me.
And he sees this as God's project, as he says right here.
You know what's awesome about this? All the pressure is off me because God is using my gift because it's his gift. Like Aaron said today, this is his problem now. God's got to work this out. And I must tell you, since I've talked to Lance about this has gone so fast and so quick, it has been effortless. Because I gave it all to him.
He sees this as part of spiritual warfare, so he expects backlash against this, and he probably thinks that the reaction to this is some part of that spiritual battle.
I'm asking for your backup. I'm asking for your covering. Because we're going to need this. Yep. The giant that I have to slay, that we have to slay, is so huge. And it's not going to want to be slayed. The minute this goes out, and Lance and I talked about this, when we cut the head off the giant, it's going to be really exciting. People will be stunned. Oh my gosh, we cut the head off the giant. That's great. But then when David cut the head off the giant, it was exciting, it was neat, people were stunned. But then Saul got jealous. There's going to be a backlash against this. I'm not calling it out. I'm not confessing it. We're going to stand against it, but that's why I need your prayers, guys.
But he makes it very clear that he doesn't intend to be delivering sermons. He explains how he wants to speak in parables, not be TBN or some other Christian network.
We're going to speak to them in parables. Guys, I am not making TBN. This is not TBN. This is not the church channel. It's not Golden Eagle Broadcasting or Daystar. God bless those people. It's amazing. My stuff has got to be today. It's got to be hip. It's got to be cool. It's got to reach the secular people who we're trying to reach. If I put a Christian network out there, no problem. I've got the Christians. That's cool. But I'm missing the entire other spectrum of the world.
I think it's pretty clear that he's not trying to create VeggieTales here. He's trying to create art that he believes reflects his values. And you can see this with how he talks about his prior work, which I don't think anyone would interpret as being religious, even though it could be described as Christian, or at least rooted in Christian ideas. He talks about God's providence in The Fairly Odd Parents.
I've got 4 shows on television. One's called The Fairly Odd Parents. It's been on for 17 years. Most shows in TV aren't on for even a few years, let alone cartoons. That's been on for 17 years. And the reason it has been, I can tell you guys this, I've spoken over it, Mark 11:23 and 24, for the last 17 years. Whatever things you ask for when you pray, you believe you receive them and you shall have them. Laid my hands on all of the work.
And what might sound to be the most nefarious part of this, he explains his idea of how Christ fits into his work by using the symbol of a Trojan horse.
My point is, my work has touched people's hearts because it has the gospel inside of it. It's like a Trojan horse. I have Christ inside of me, and Christ is inside my shows. We can never hear about Christ in my show, but you feel him.
That may sound like it's deceptive, but I think what he's really saying is that Jesus is in his work, that he believes that the ideas and values that he sees in the Bible are being communicated through what he says, which is very different than creating religious content. It's essentially the difference between an essay and a work of art. Even if there is artistry in essay work, essays are telling you things. And art, instead, is about exploring things in the most basic sense. And he doesn't intend to give you an essay about why Jesus is God. He wants to show you. The reason I think that this is an important difference as to whether Butch Hartman is scamming his fans by having them fund his evil religious network is because anyone who's creating something is reflecting those things that they believe and hold to be true. And that's a good thing. That's how we have art that communicates and talks. And from the get-go, it was clear that Butch Hartman was going to be a creative mind behind a lot of the programming that would be on Oaxis, if not all. Again, the language was very unclear. It makes sense that his art would reflect his values, which are rooted in Christianity. Christianity for him is more than something he does on Sunday. It is something that he believes is an important part of what he's doing on this planet. That doesn't mean he intends to create religious content, nor does it mean that he intends to covertly convert your children to Christianity. He may want your kids to convert to Christianity. He may hope that the ideas here might end up leading a kid to Christianity. But I see no reason to believe that Timmy Turner is going to turn around and give people the Bible verse of the day. A big part of the way that Butch's values plays into this network has been apparent from the beginning, and it goes beyond just the values that are communicated in the content itself. The idea of creating a family-friendly network and steering away from negative content is very important to Butch and is really at the heart of the ideas that he's talking about here. He talks a lot about the evils of cable and how they started showing nudity on television, or how he saw things that were very inappropriate. He has an idea that entertainment should uplift, not shock, which he has repeated many times. And while I might not agree with the way that he draws his dichotomy here, I think it's important to understand this idea to see how his values are playing into what he's making. He does not want television to be a 24/7 sermon. He wants content that he feels is uplifting to everyone. And this is a big difference. He wants content that is safe for kids to watch, and he wants people to be able to take away something positive from it. And I really believe that he believes what he's saying here, even if he says some crap. I don't think that this is trickery in his mind, even if to you this might seem like some religious deceit. Fundamentally, my concern is that people see Christian values as being something separated from other types of values that people hold in their life philosophies. They see Christian values as being inherently religious, and that communicating those values is something that you have to put up a disclaimer for. I don't think that's necessary. I think that when we create content, we are going to put our values there. And we don't need to have a disclaimer that my values are rooted in a religion or my values are rooted in this book. I think that communicating those values honestly is something that constitutes good art. And I don't think that it was deceptive for him to not bring up much religious topics before. Yes, he does say that he was trying to reach secular people, but I don't think that means that he was trying to trick them into funding his campaign. He wanted to reach them by addressing them on their level, and then he wanted to create content that is filled with his values and to share his values with the world. That's what artists do. This isn't some deception just because it's religiously motivated. I could talk about this for a while, but I think that I've made my points as clear as I can just based off of this conference video. I want to give my response to one of these videos criticizing Butch Hartman to show the kind of thinking that's going on and why I think it is somewhat questionable. There have been many videos on this topic. I'm just going to choose one because a lot of them are saying the same thing. And this is by someone who I respect. It is created by Pie Guy Rules, who has been covering this from the beginning and has made a good number of videos about it. He made 2 videos on his channel prior to this one. The first one was deconstructing the campaign, and I was completely behind that one. The second one was also about the campaign. It was more negative than a video I would have made, but I think that his complaints were all valid and I didn't have a problem with them. But this video, in reaction to this conference that we've been talking about, was part of why I was so concerned about this and felt like I wanted to talk about it. So I just want to talk about this point by point.
Butch Hartman did some sort of talk at some seminar a few months back in early 2018. And in that talk, Butch says a number of very incriminating things about his plan for Oaxis. Now, I can't show you the talk because the one thing that Butch has been very liberal about is taking down anyone who re-uploads anything with him in it. So here are the timestamps. There will be a link in the description in the cards. If anyone wants to make a nice montage of just the most incriminating things that Butch says and make that into a video, I will 100% link it in the description or the cards or wherever. And as usual, I do highly urge you to watch the video for yourself and hear what Butch says himself. Don't just take my word for it, because although I am trying to present things in as factual a way as possible, I want you guys to see it for yourselves and to make your own judgment.
I'm very glad that Pie Guy says this and links to the video. even though the video that he did link to, unfortunately, has been taken down by the Butch man or someone associated with him, because I do think that he does misrepresent what Butch Hartman says in this conference. And I'm going to try to explain why.
But before I break everything down point by point, I want to give you the general gist. From the start, Oaxis was meant to be a Christian streaming service to instill Christian values in children.
So this is taken to be a very negative thing. The idea that Oaxis was planned to be a Christian streaming service to instill Christian values in children. Why are Christian values different from other kinds of values? And what does it really mean to instill? Instilling values sounds very insidious, maybe on the surface, especially when you put it next to some religious connotation. But because all art is communicating values, I don't see any problem with Butch Hartman communicating his values through the art he makes, even though he is talking to children. I think that Butch has done a good job at being responsible with the content that he makes, from what I've seen. And I see no reason that his values can't be communicated, or there needs to be some disclosure that he's going to communicate them just because they are rooted in his religious beliefs and in his religious heritage. And yeah, the plan from the start was to do that, but that's what it's going to be for pretty much every Christian individual. Christians believe that God has sent them into the world in order to show God's love, among many other things. So yes, he's going to try to show what he believes are Christian ideas, but Christian ideas doesn't just mean saying that Jesus is God all the time. Christian ideas constitute a lot of things that you probably believe in too. So to communicate Christian ideas for Butch is just communicating what he thinks are good ideas.
Butch Hartman is trying to indoctrinate your kids.
Ooh, indoctrinate. Indoctrinate is a really pointed word, especially in these kinds of situations. Indoctrination sounds like, you're putting a kid into a cult. But remember, Butch said nothing about planning to make kids believe anything. He wanted to show kids something. This is very different. So that's not indoctrination. Indoctrination is me telling you what to believe. And Butch has made it pretty clear he has no intention to do that. He wants to show Jesus through parables, and he wants Jesus to have a place in his shows. So I don't think that there's any way that that constitutes indoctrination just because his values are religious.
And I'm not mad that he wants to make a Christian streaming service. I don't care. He can do that. What's disgusting about all of this is that not once in his campaign, not in any of the videos he made on his channel about this, was he honest and did he disclose the fact that this is a religious thing.
It's not a religious thing in any capacity, at least as far as he's described it. Now, maybe Oaxis will come out as loosely defined as it is, and it will be airing religious content, and in that case, I'll criticize him. But he has made no indication that he intends to do a religious thing. He is being motivated by his Christian beliefs and by his Christian calling to create this entertainment. That's what he's said. That is not some religious thing. That's just creating content based on your values. That's what anyone's doing. Pie Guy's videos are based in his values. And Butch Hartman's videos are based in his. My videos are based in my values, and your videos are based in yours. It's not bad to communicate your values. It's not something that is any different from other people's values. It's inherently the case that in producing content, your values are there.
The first time he actually mentions that it's going to have Christian values was in a live stream he did just before Oaxis reached its funding that not a lot of people saw. And yet, after he reached his goal in his second live stream, it was all, thank God for giving me this, and I knew God had a vision for me. It was pretty much non-stop discussion of God and religion. Again, I don't have a problem with Butch being a religious person, but he intentionally hid this to get your money. That's what is going on, and he's continuing to intentionally hide this because he doesn't want people to know this, because he knows that if people know this, they're going to be incredibly hesitant about this streaming service.
I'm not sure what Pie Guy's point here is. Butch Hartman has been pretty clearly Christian forever. He has been thanking God for things and talking about how he sees his work as something that God is doing through him for his entire career. So I don't think this is a really valid criticism here, even if maybe he didn't say the word God as many times before Oaxis got funded. I just don't think that's a really great point. I don't think Butch Hartman even had any plan to hide this information or to be kind of sneaky about his religious beliefs. Again, he's always been very openly Christian. And he said from the beginning that he would be creating the content. It shouldn't take Einstein to determine that his values are going to be in the work he's creating.
Yes, of course, all media has messages, and no, honestly, there isn't anything wrong with some of the messages in the Bible. But it's one thing to have morals and to have ideas infused in your shows. It's another thing to go into your entire streaming platform with a very politicized, very religious agenda, and then not even tell people about it when you're taking their money.
This seems kind of contradictory to me. He's bringing up that, it's okay to have your own moral system and to have your own messages and morals. But he seems to have an issue with this idea that the service was about a specific thing. He says that it's politicized. I don't see how it's political. He says that it's religious. I don't think it's religious. But beyond that, I don't think that it's even singular. He's saying that he has his own singular goal with what he's doing, but of course Oaxis is going to consist of many people, and those people are going to communicate their values. Now, Butch is going to hire people with similar values, but I don't think that constitutes an agenda. Well, the agenda of Oaxis, while there is an agenda, I think has been pretty clear from the beginning, and I think the only real agenda there is to create family-friendly content that he thinks can be seen by anyone and is uplifting rather than shocking, which is always his dichotomy. And I think that comes out from his religious values. I don't think he's been deceptive about that. And like Pie Guy says, he's communicating his messages. And of course, when he makes something, it's going to be for the purpose of communicating what he wants to communicate. That's why people make things. So I don't see what the problem is here.
At 9:14, Butch talks about how much kids are on their phones and tablets these days. Which, okay, he's got a decent point there, but then he goes and ruins it because this whole thing is about a streaming service. If your argument is that kids need to spend less time on their tablets, why are you going to make something that when used correctly will encourage kids to use their tablet more?
I think Pie Guy is misrepresenting what Butch Hartman said here. Butch Hartman does talk about how much time people spend on their phones and how little time they spend with family. But he doesn't say that the amount of screen time is a bad thing anywhere in this. He says that the amount of screen time compared to the amount of time people have with families is concerning. And he's concerned about what's being delivered on those screens. He never says there's a problem with the screens. He says there's a problem with what's being delivered. So his idea is to create this network in order to deliver something that he thinks is more positive. He isn't saying that he wants to go back to before there were screens. That doesn't make sense. And what Butch actually says makes a lot of sense here. And I think that Pie Guy is jumping to conclusions about what Butch Hartman is actually trying to say.
At 10 minutes in, Butch talks about Amazon, Hulu, and Netflix, and he mentions that they do have kids sections, but you see, the reason why Oaxis needs to exist, according to Butch, the reason why Netflix Kids isn't good enough is because apparently the rest of these companies have smutty content on their main site, and they're profiting off of the smutty content. Yeah, Butch has a problem with apparently adults actually watching content with nudity and violence. Oh no, it's ruining the culture.
No. That's not what he said, and I don't know if Pie Guy has misunderstood what Butch is saying or is intentionally misrepresenting what Butch said, but that's simply not what Butch is saying here. He talks about this cultural idea that parents don't want to watch the family-friendly content, that the family-friendly content that exists seems, in Butch's eyes, to be exclusively for children. Now, I might have problems with that idea, but that's what he's saying. He's saying that the family-friendly content that exists isn't appealing to adults, and so that adults want to go and watch content that he does not see as uplifting. That's a very different thing than this idea that anyone who profits off of adult content should not be watched.
Big guys like Netflix have shown up, Hulu, Amazon. They've got some content, but most of it is designed to shock, not uplift. Yeah. Who can agree to that? Yeah. Right. There's a kids section, but it's there's a kids section and a family section always, but it's kind of like the kids table. They don't want to talk about, yeah, we have that. Well, look at all this other stuff we have. Look at all the racy stuff that gets all the ratings. Look at what gets all the money.
And then at 10:30 in this video, Butch Hartman does something disgusting. He says, word for word, when I grew up, kids had a hard time, they got through it. Suicide was never even thought about. Where's that coming from? I mean, look, I'm as critical of the media as anyone else out there, and I know that there are definitely some harmful things in the world. But to blame kids having depression and being suicidal on them seeing a horror movie is just insane, and it completely ignores the fact that the reason why there aren't as many of these cases in the past are because we just, as a society, didn't have as good a grasp on understanding what was going on. Depression has existed forever.
I think his understanding here of the history of mental health in the United States might not be completely fleshed out, but I agree here, and I think it was pretty gross for Butch Hartman to make that kind of statement to promote his product.
There was literally a time in the past called the Great Depression.
You make a good point, and then you say that.
At 13:45, Butch explains that, oh no, this isn't going to be the church network. Even though he wants to instill parables into his work, this has to be cool, it has to be hip, and he says if he wanted just the Christians, he could make a Christian network and that'd be fine, that'd be cool. But he wants to reach everyone, which means he knows that when he targets people on his YouTube videos, in his Oaxis Kickstarter, he knows that there's a decent chunk of his audience that aren't Christian. You can't say that this whole thing is about making Christian content for Christian families. No, he is intentionally trying to get non-Christians into his religion by lying about this whole thing, by lying about it. He is trying to take your money and not being honest about what it's for and what's actually going on here.
I don't think that Pie Guy knows what parables are, because Butch was pretty clear here. Church is not a series of parables. Church is sermons. So just know, parables are... Christians see stories with Christian values as parables. That's what parables are to a lot of Christian people. So to instill parables is kind of a meaningless statement. It's, showing a parable, showing a story, and hoping that the audience can see the idea of Christ in that story. That isn't some churchy thing. That is the way that Christians are going to communicate all the time if they really believe what they're saying. Showing Christian content to non-religious people, or really, I should say, showing Christian-inspired content to non-religious people is not a way of getting people into Christianity. It's a way of showing people what you believe, even beyond your own religion. By inserting your values into art, the goal isn't an essay. It isn't to convince people of your exact beliefs or to indoctrinate them. It's to show them your beliefs. So I don't think that this is in any way an attempt to get people into his religion, even if he hopes that it does have the result of Christianizing culture. Where's the lie? Where did he say that his Christian values would not be in his content? I don't see any lie here. Even with the Trojan horse statement, I don't think that constitutes a lie. I think that is, as I explained before. And Pie Guy doesn't even talk about the Trojan horse statement. So I'm not sure where the lying is. Where has he been dishonest?
Similarly, if you're someone else that doesn't believe in Butch's beliefs and you're not really interested in spreading them around some more, I'm also sorry if you donated.
If you donated to Butch's campaign and you're mad that his values are going to be in his work, I don't know what to say. His values are going to be in whatever he makes, and he's been very open about his Christianity, so I don't really see any grounds for criticism there.
And listen, if you are a religious person and you're watching this video, I have no problem with you. I really don't. As long as you're a kind person to all, as long as you don't lie to people, as long as you're upfront when you're preaching your belief system, right? As long as you understand and acknowledge there are other beliefs out there, and you should not try to deceitfully impress your beliefs on other people and other people's children, mind you. This is specifically, especially for children. As long as you don't do things like that, I think you're a cool person, and I like you, and I don't have a problem with you.
He says that he's okay with religious people, and I believe that Pie Guy believes this, but he doesn't think that Christian people should be able to communicate their values without disclosing that it's some kind of Christian value and wearing some Christian badge to let everyone know that this is Christian content coming to you, which I don't think is really accepting of religious people. I don't think that it is an accepting position to not allow people to speak freely. And I really think this is coming from Pie Guy and many other non-religious people not understanding what religious people are doing when they're communicating their values. And I think that that is really, really dangerous. And I also think that there's a lack of understanding of what preaching is. Preaching isn't communicating your values. Preaching is a sermon. Preaching is telling people what to believe. And that's just not what Butch is doing, and that's not what Christians are doing when they create art that represents their beliefs. And my final note here is that it's not deceitful to put your views into art. It's not deceitful to communicate what you believe. And I'm going to end this video just saying that despite how it might sound, I actually respect Butch Hartman and I respect Pie Guy, and I just want people to understand more of how religious people feel about their beliefs and what they mean when they say things that Butch Hartman says that might sound a little bit sketchy to those who aren't religious. So I would love to talk with you more. If you disagree or agree, leave a comment down below and we can continue talking about this. I think it's just really important that we can discuss this kind of thing, and I'll be excited to hear from you. Bye.